Well, the line is that money is only a tool, right? It's only a tool to either have life experiences, to make a difference in somebody else's life, a charity, your children, whatever it is a tool. So every time when you look at money, it can't be looked at as if it is the end. Like, it is not the end. It's the means to something. So when you look at it from that it is only a tool, that it gives you your answer. So is it to be saved or spent? It depends. What is my goal out there, and how do I best use this tool? So if my goal is experiences and I'm trying to do things, I'm trying to have a luxury in my life, to have the vehicle or whatever it is, in that case, well, absolutely it should be spent. Sometimes we tell people, you should be saving it because you're in a position that tool needs to build so that someday you can pull income off it in retirement. So again, it all comes back to really, are you looking at that money as what it truly is, which is a tool?
That was Ben Taatjes talking about the different ways to view money for a retiree. Hey everybody, Jared Sebesta here, co-host of Retire Repurposed. On behalf of Ben Taatjes and myself, thank you so much for joining us here today. Well, over the past several shows, we've been talking about mindset. Today, we're going to apply the mindset theme to your money. The way by which you view money, but more specifically saving and spending money, is a massive indicator on your mindset about it. Do you have a scarcity mindset where you struggle to spend money, even if you have money saved for that specific reason and you have more than enough? Is it still a battle to let go? Do you struggle to spend money on yourself? Does practicality always seem to trump pleasure or experiences where you feel guilty spending any form of excess on yourself or even others? Where you always justify being the best steward of your money is to spend the least amount possible in nearly every situation. A scarcity mindset is one of the biggest dangers for a retiree, even more so than running out of money. Scarcity will not only steal the joy out of living and having money, it will limit the creation ability and your ability as a retiree to walk into God's fullness and abundance. In this podcast, Ben Taatjes will pose 3 specific questions that will expose any scarcity thinking in a retiree's spending habits. Enjoy this episode. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the show. So glad that you are joining us here on the podcast, Retire Repurposed. If you are new to the show, you're going to find out very quickly that we speak a little bit of a different language. Yes, this podcast is for retirees and pre-retirees, but this is a show that we're not going to talk about investments. We're not going to talk about portfolios. We may talk about how you handle money. In fact, we're going to do that on today's show, but it's really where life and retirement intersect. This is more about life than it is retirement, but if you are retired or approaching retirement, you have come to the right place. Just a reminder before we get started with today's show, we're going to talk about mindsets on how you handle money. Just a reminder, the past couple of shows, we've been kind of leading up to our content today. Several episodes ago, we talked about a really important book that we recommend that you read. It's called The Gap versus the Gain. And we talked about the dangers of what we call gap thinking for a retiree. Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan wrote a book called The Gap and the Gain, and it talks about how we always tend to, as humans, look at our growth looking forward versus an ideal. And that book is all about really looking back and looking at the growth that you've had over the past month or 6 months or a year. I think if we were honest, we're not the same person that we were a year ago. Gain thinking looks at that growth and celebrates it instead of always looking to where we could be or should be. Again, that's a book that we highly recommend. Then we talked about how gap thinking and gain thinking intersect with gratitude and the importance of gratitude for a retiree. And then we talked about the power of your words and your voice, how important that is for not only your life, but also for others. And then last week, we talked about the art of creation. If you can get into this gain thinking mindset, that opens the door for you to create. And we had several talking points last week about the importance of creation, yes, even for a retiree. Ben Taatjes joins me on the show now. And again, it's a very countercultural concept. This is the way we look at things on this podcast, where The world will tell you once you retire, creation is done. It's time to step aside. But we kind of preach a different concept, and last week was a great example of that show.
Yeah, it's super important to me is watching people thrive in retirement and making sure that they get the permission maybe to do that, and maybe even get the direction from us that no, you should not look at retirement as an end or that you're done with anything. It's great to look back on your working career and say, I did good. I did a lot of great things. I learned a lot. But certainly don't say that I'm done, right? I think last week's show was a great tie into just how important it is to see people not ever feel like they've arrived. We talked about how arriving is the enemy of thriving.
Yeah.
And when you get in the mode of either, I sold my business or I retired from my career and I've arrived now. My goal was to sell my business. My goal my whole life was to retire. That's when I see a red flag is like you're gonna struggle, because again, when you feel as if you've arrived, no longer will you thrive.
You brought up a book quote that you had been reading, and it stated this: your exit isn't over until you're fully engaged into whatever comes next. I think that is, again, a countercultural concept when it comes to retirement, because society will say once you retire, it's now over. What we're encouraging people to do, even retirees, is that once you kind of close the book on one chapter of life and maybe your working career, you need to be fully engaged in the next thing and not just, a hobby or something just to kind of fill your time with.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it becomes this the restful season between. And I want to make sure people understand that I'm a big proponent of taking some rest, and making sure, I worked a good career and I'm slowing down a little bit. I have that Sabbath moment, if you will, that time where I'm able to just say, okay, I'm going to figure out what's next and then get fully engaged in that. And I'll put a plug in once, Jared. We had, it's been a couple of years now, but we released Repurposed University, and we still have that material for our listeners. If somebody wants that information, Repurposed University was a 5-week class that you and I taught and videotaped it, and the videos are available. We also have a workbook with that, but basically takes somebody who is kind of to that point where they're going through a life transition and they're ready to see what's next, but not sure. What does that look like? And we walk through the mindset shift. We walk through how people can better understand how God made them, their skills, talents, abilities, where they have passion. It just really digs into that. And I would encourage anybody in that stage of life to reach out to us. We'd love to provide you with that material, get you going, because once again, until you figure out what's next and then you continue to grow and create in some way, you won't feel like you're fully retired.
If you want more information, go to our website, retirerepurpose.com. You can find more information on Repurposed University. But that was the whole point. A major leg of everything that we stand on with this podcast is that if you're not growing, you're dying. And so don't buy this lie that just because you may be retired or approaching retirement, that your days of creating are over. If you missed any of those shows, especially last week's show, go back, check us out, subscribe on iTunes. We're on Spotify. Go check us out, subscribe, but make sure you listen to last week's show, because again, all these shows, as usual, they build on one another and lead us to today's show. So today we're going to talk about identifying what we call scarcity mindsets when handling your money. Let's just start with, why are we doing this? Obviously, the time of year probably has something to do with it. That's a little hint, but why are we getting into this topic on today's show, Ben?
Well, it kind of hit me, last week's shows we were talking through growth and why we try to grow and how we best steward, right, our life, how we best steward what God's given us, to kind of tie that back to, the financial side of what we do. And so many times I'll see people that get in the mindset of just hoarding, not necessarily hoarding, but just being over cautious with what they have to spend, where they don't even see that they could be spending more, they could be giving more, they could be enjoying life more because of really this. They feel as if they're going to run out of money. And we've had past shows about the money disorder. Yeah. I'd encourage anybody struggling with that thought of, man, am I going to run out of money, to go back and listen to that show. But today it kind of came out of, hey, we're talking about growth. We're talking about creation and how we got to keep creating and doing things. And in there, we started talking about contentment. And I think I just wanted to further expand upon the idea of contentment on this show because, again, somebody might hear us as, oh, you got to be growing, you got to be growing, you got to be creating. It's about, boy, these guys are never content, right? You're not a content person. And that is not what we're saying. In fact, what we're saying is that God made us to grow and create, okay? Like the parable of the talents is one of my favorite parables. We know that servant who did nothing with what he was entrusted, he was the only of the three that got the, you wicked and slothful servant answer from his maker.
Yeah. So again, let's get into this here before we kind of get into the meat of our show. Contentment, and we mentioned it just a little bit on last week's show. What would you say is the biggest, what's the differentiator for those of us who want to be content? We don't want to be in a constant state of need, but yet we feel this desire to want to grow. And also you're hearing messages like this where we're encouraging retirees to create and continue to expand. So where is kind of the happy medium, or what's the heart posture that people need to have?
Well, I mean, since you said the word heart, I mean, it's where your heart is, right? It has very little to do with what you have and far more to do with how you handle it and how you look at what you have, right? That's the key, is why do you have what you have and what are you using it for?
Sure.
It is far less to do what's actually there. I've seen people that are some of the wealthiest people I work with, Jared, that are very content and they're growing and they're creating and they're doing things, but they are content with what's God's given them. They feel as if they've been entrusted with a lot, so they are trying to practice good stewardship in growing that. But it's not that their heart is like, oh, I want more because it's going to, fulfill me. I want more to keep up with the neighbor. It's all comes down to not what you have, it's how you're handling it.
Yeah, I would say, to expand on that, if you ever feel that you need something to be happy, you need something to be whole, especially something, something physical like a thing or a certain amount of wealth, I think you're getting into a real gray area. And again, to your point, people that we know, that we work with, that have plenty, that are very wealthy, they continue to want to push the envelope and expand and grow. They're not doing it out of a heart of like, I need more. They're doing it because they are, again, I would say, representing their creator in the most the most honoring way, and that's taking every opportunity that God's given us and stewarding it well. And I feel like that's the point, and that's kind of the main differentiator. Let's talk about this this story that you had recently with a client, and this goes back to somebody, again, how they're handling their money, and you were having a conversation with them or helping them through kind of a major purchase. Tell everybody that story.
Yeah, Jared, the decision, while it felt for them like this major life decision, was actually a pretty minor purchase. It was a vehicle purchase. And sometimes even the minor purchases, when we see people making that decision, we can get clues to how they're thinking about money. Yeah. And that was the case here. She was getting a different vehicle, and there was always the bells and whistles that for some people would feel like that's more of a luxury item. Now, this individual, keep in mind, has 7 figures plus, great income stream, good income plan, whether it be an extra $5,000 to $10,000 on this vehicle to get what she was considering luxury items like heated seats and stuff, is far from a make it or break it decision. But for her, she made a comment, something along the lines of, I just don't know if it's good, if it'd be a good steward of my money to make that decision. Yeah. And on one hand, I'm like, well, maybe, but stewarding doesn't always mean just holding on to everything until the very end. Sometimes being a good steward is to use it and to get thinking, oh yeah, I can actually, it isn't even pampering yourself. It's just, I can splurge on something that will benefit my life in some way. Yeah. That's okay. It doesn't always have to look like scrimping every single penny and not spending it until the very end. And I'd asked her, I said, well, why would you save that? And the question that I came to was it wasn't necessarily so that she could give more money to charity or there was some higher goal. It was just because she wanted to hold on to the lump sum of money instead. It was like, I want to hold on to that extra money so in case something happens down the road. I'm like, well, to me, that wasn't actually a good use of the money. I think she should have been going for that, what she was considering a luxury decision, because it was going to better her life.
To add a little more context to this story, this woman she's single, if I know the story correctly, and also too doesn't have any heirs either. So there was probably a little bit more, to the story there on her thinking this particular way. We've always said too that handling money sometimes is a litmus test as to what's happening inside of somebody. This is a great example of that. Would you say?
Yeah, even if it's a small decision like that, allowed us to see in a little bit. I think for our listeners today is look at how you make those decisions around money. What goes through your mind? So if you're kind of having this these smaller financial decisions and you're making them out of a place of scarcity. If you're looking at them like, oh, I just got to hold on to that money because it'll bother me so much if my account goes from $1 million down to 995,000 or whatever the answer is there, whatever that cost is. But I think you have to look at your different inputs into that decision in order to come up with how you're viewing money.
There's 3 questions that we want to pose to you listeners. And we want to use these questions, again, as kind of litmus tests or filters by which you think about money. So we're going to run through these here in the next 10 minutes or so. Here's the first one that we came up with, Ben. True or false? Money is to be saved, not spent. I bet you could probably write a book just on that mentality with the thousands of people that you've had conversations with regarding money. Where's the line, and how would this individual fall on that continuum?
Well, the line is that money is only a tool, right? It's only a tool to either have life experiences, to make a difference in somebody else's life, a charity, your children, whatever it is a tool. So every time when you look at money, it can't be looked at as if it is the end. Like, it is not the end. It's the means to something. So when you look at it from that it is only a tool, that it gives you your answer. So is it to be saved or spent? It depends. What is my goal out there, and how do I best use this tool? So if my goal is experiences and I'm trying to do things, I'm trying to have a luxury in my life, to have the vehicle or whatever it is, in that case, well, absolutely it should be spent. Sometimes we tell people, you should be saving it because you're in a position that tool needs to build so that someday you can pull income off it in retirement. So again, it all comes back to really, are you looking at that money as what it truly is, which is a tool?
It seems to me that when I've struggled with scarcity in my own mind, I've hated spending. Like, I love saving. I love when the money goes in. I hate when the money goes out. I almost felt like spending was like a necessary evil. It's like, I have to spend money just to exist in this world. And that's also, I would say now that I've kind of come out of that mindset, that is definitely falling into a gray area as well.
Yeah, and I would ask you, why'd you save it in the first place?
Right.
If you were not planning on spending that money ever, then why would you ever put it away so that what's the reason, right? If you're putting money away and you're not planning on spending it, okay, then the next goal would be, okay, are you going to give it away? Or to children or charity? Why were you saving that money? My guess is some of that money was put away so when that emergency comes and you need new tires and you need this or you need that, you have the money there so you can accomplish those things.
Yeah, I would even say the moving goalposts, and this happens to everybody in some capacity, where it's like, once I get X amount of dollars in the bank, then we can, it will change my mindset and I'll feel a little bit more free to spend. And what I've seen in my own life is that magical number always moves. It's the horizon that you never really ever get to.
Yeah, you'll never get there, right? It comes back to that hedonic treadmill idea that we kind of get used to the way of living. We get used to a certain level of where we're at. And it's like what I thought would make me fulfilled at some point, if that was your mindset. Like, once I have that car, once I have that house, that will then, you'll be used to that again, and you'll kind of get used to it, and then it will not fulfill you because it never does, and you'll be looking at what's next.
So How do you view money? Is it to be saved or is it to be spent? Think about that question and think about how you view spending in your mind. The next question that we want to pose to you is this: the more money that I have at the end of my life, the more I, quote, won in life. Again, I would have to assume that you see this all the time where people are almost saving money in such a way where they feel like the more I have, the more success I had in my life. Break that down for us.
Yeah, usually it's not the most successful people that probably even get into that mindset, but it's somebody who's like, yeah, I've got a certain dollar amount in my mind. Once I achieve that, I'll be content, I'll be happy. But again, I look at money as if it should be used for some end, right? It should be a means to an end. So if I've been saving money over the years so that I can use it in retirement, then I better be spending it and not just the interest. Many times people get in that, they're caught and they're like, oh, I saved, whether it be $1 million or $5 million, and now they're going to pull 4% or whatever the figure that they've been told is the right number to withdraw off it.
Right.
And many times that ends up being just the income or the interest off their money. Well, that's not spending your money. That's spending the income on your money. So if you saved it to indeed spend it, then you better have a spending plan, giving plan, a budget. We talk about that all the time with people. It's like, hey, you needed a budget when you were saving money so that you could save something for the rainy day and for the goal of retirement, whatever that was. Well, now you need a budget so that you can spend and effectively, get rid of the money that you've been saving in a God-honoring way. So many times it looks like large charitable gifts, giving to children, even spending on some really great vacations, experiences. You have to have the freedom to do that. One of my favorite books, I know you love it, and I do too. You recommended it to me, was this Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. Yeah. I usually don't take a plan to that point or to actually end at zero. But if you are somebody who saved your money so that you can spend it, that, and not necessarily so your kids can, I remind people all the time, that tells me that you're somebody that said, maybe you're not going to die with zero, but you're going to certainly spend down some of what you've been saving.
It seems like there's three trains of thought. I'm going to retire and I'm going to continue to build my net worth. I'm going to retire and I'm just going to kind of plateau and just live off the interest. And then there's like this other train of thought, which is I'm going to not only deaccumulate, I'm going to rapidly deaccumulate. And that's kind of goes back to the Die with Zero book. I would challenge you, if you struggle with spending, if you struggle with seeing that net worth number go down, read Die with Zero, because it'll mess with your brain a little bit, because he introduces a whole new way of looking at your wealth and your life and your time in a whole new way. So I do recommend that you go check that out. Point number 3, or at least question number 3, and we've touched on this just a little bit. Here it is. Do you consider yourself worthy to splurge on? This goes back to the lady that you talked about at the beginning of the show with the car. I think that so many times, especially in maybe it's like rural mid-America or maybe the Christian camp. I think so many times people are so hyper aware of spending money and not wanting to come off content that they almost they create a mindset about themselves that they're not worth it. Would that be a fair statement, or how would you contextualize that statement in your mind with your experience?
Yeah, Jared, I think people need to be reminded that God entrusts us with whatever that is, and sometimes that means abundance. Sometimes we see in people that are just blessed with financial resources, and it isn't always the right answer. Just say, well, I can't certainly have leather seats in my car. I can't certainly have these luxury items, whatever that is. Now, again, I come back to looking at where the person's heart is. Are they buying things strictly? Is there excess that can come? Yeah. But I think more oftentimes I see people err on the side of scarcity, where they're like, I don't dare spend that because I don't feel like it's being a good steward. Yeah. Meanwhile, God's saying to you, and many times I've seen that, we're like, hey, I've given you this so you can enjoy it. Yeah. And we end up looking way too much like, you're a good God, but I'm just waiting for the shoe to fall. I'm just waiting for something bad to happen because I don't dare spend it. And it could be that your life is ticking away. Your life is ticking away and you're looking at money as if it's going to run out. And really, you should be looking at it as, no, God, you've given me a lot. You've entrusted me with a lot. Yes, I need to do a lot for others. I need to do a lot for the kingdom. But I also can enjoy what you've given me.
Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through an Avantax affiliated insurance agency.